Jab jab! Hello my old friend. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it? But now that Terrordrome Reign of Legends has left early access, I can finally review the game, which unfortunately means that our annual look at Terrordrome will likely come to an end. And it's finally time that everyone find out what my final thoughts are. And well, unfortunately, I'm not all that impressed with the final results. While I don't think that it's all that bad of a game, when compared to other indie fighting titles, it does seem to fall a bit short for me. For example, both Power Rangers Battle for the Grid and even the adult fighting game Fight Angel Special Edition have made stories separate from their arcade segments. While this came at the cost of removing any story from the arcade, the quality of the story mode in Terrordrome is only a few pictures and some lines of text. While it is better than nothing, it does feel a little bit outdated and cheap. Visuals also seem a bit off, which may be the best point at which I mention a bit of this game's progress through early access. After Jab Jab's recommendation of the game, I tried it and released this video in April of 2021. We then went on to revisit it on the October and then have revisited it yearly up to now. And despite the weaker hardware throughout most of this history and the compression added by YouTube, I think there are times where characters genuinely look better in the older versions of the game. Now, you do admittedly have to kind of ignore the background, as I frequently had to turn down graphics fidelity in order to make up for the lack of optimization, but the characters in the present release on all max settings simply look blurry no matter what I seem to change. While potato smear faces really do distract me, it's not quite as distracting as some of the objects that a few of the levels have in the foreground, though I would say it's only really noticeable on Dr. Jackal's laboratory, especially when you're playing as Spring Heel Jack. But even then, taking everything into consideration, I would argue that the graphics are worse than early 7th gen games. While graphics aren't everything, I also don't think that the levels really stick out artistically, though they do serve their purpose. I do think that the voice acting is actually pretty decent, and the music is on par, if not better, than some of the other indie fighting games I've played. The gameplay, on the other hand, is about average. It has some interesting elements, like a dodge button that you can use to avoid any attack, but requires better timing than block, and gives you the opportunity to counter. The way the combo system works is reasonably slick, more similar to the Mortal Kombat style rather than Street Fighter, though I did notice some balancing issues. I found Spring Heel Jack really easy to combo with without having to look into any of his moves or practice with him. In fact, he was so easy, I easily finished his arcade while having much harder times with other characters, particularly with slower ones. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want every character to play the same. I want them to feel a little bit different, but when it feels like there are characters that are leagues above the others, it does sour any chances of this becoming a competitive game, though this will appeal to some gamers who miss this element of imbalance in modern fighters. I also think that they could have done a bit better job with the tutorial elements. It's just a little bit too specific in its requirements while forcing you to remember what you've set the controls to, as it doesn't change when you change from the rather bizarre default scheme. Though ultimately the tutorial does an okay job, I wish it had a little bit more depth and expanded on more characters, though this could have been done in the regular training mode, which would have made the regular training mode much better. In terms of accessibility, Terrordrome actually does a decent job. There are 9 languages for you to choose from that changes the menus and the in-game text. There are 6 different difficulties, though I found easy relatively challenging, which seems to be a common trend amongst indie fighting games, and key bindings are remappable on both controller and keyboard. For an indie game that's also reasonably convenient, it's available on Steam and the Epic Games Store, and it has a decent amount of settings, and has, since its launch, received a decent amount of optimization that has it running pretty well, though I did notice some stutters. However, I still do have some problems with the game that I'll admit most players would never find. And this is only because you would only discover it if you played multiplayer locally. That's because if you try to change your key bindings for player 2 on keyboard, there is no way to exit button mapping for player 2. Well, I may not be particularly excited about Terrordrome. I do find some of the mechanics interesting, such as the dodge function and the limitations put on certain special moves. But in the long run, I don't think it really stands out from its peers. It handles fine, but the AI in this and many indie fighters just don't feel really that great. I do like the theme and kind of wish there were more fighters and that they had put a little bit more effort into the level design, but Terrordrome, outside of Mortal Kombat DLC, doesn't really have much competition when it comes to fighting as a mythical being that you would see in a movie. While I would struggle to label this a quality game, I also really can't call it a bad one. So what does it mean? Well, it's somewhere in between. Meh. Average. But perhaps one you'll bring out year after year for Halloween season, if you decide to buy it. So yeah, I hope you're not too mad at me, Jab Jab. I really appreciate the recommendation and the support that you've shown me over the years. I don't know how you or most of my viewers managed to find my channel, but I really appreciate everyone that stuck around and hope that this will only encourage you or others to recommend more games. While I can't get to them all, I'll do my best. So let me know your thoughts and recommendations down in the comments below, and I'll hope you enjoy the rest of this year's Halloween content. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.